Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another Game Vault video. As always, I'm Captain Beefy. This is the Game Vault. We're going to look at an article today from Wired Magazine. 2024 was the year the bottom fell out of the games industry. I've been talking about this pretty much throughout the year. Let's check out their take on it. We'll cue up the music and we'll do that. All right, so for people who make video games, 2024 was a year of holding on for dear life. At the annual Game Developers Conference in March, Survive Till 25 was this year's incantation, summoned to keep morale on pace. Others resorted to full-on screams as layoffs in the industry charted record highs and developers found themselves under attack online for conspiratorial nonsense. So I remember there was what studio was it? There was one of them that was screaming. I remember seeing somebody filming that or something. That's the nonsense there. I mean, who, as an adult, who screams about stuff like that? You guys got to grow up, man. That kind of shit is not, that's the nonsense. Anyway, in 2023, more than 10,000 developers lost their jobs. 1/3 of game makers surveyed at the beginning of this year reported that they'd been affected by layoffs in some way. While there were wins for labor organizers at big studios like Activision Blizzard and collective action around fighting for protection from the encroachment of AI on employment, the industry's collective brain drain continued in 2024 as workers lost jobs en masse. 6 months in, this year's layoff tally had already surpassed that of 2023. According to Matthew Ball, an advisor and producer in the games and TV space, 2024's job loss count will wind up being about 40% higher than the previous years. If memory serves me, January of 2024 was a particularly brutal month. I think there were several thousand jobs that were just lost right off the bat in 2024, starting it off really bad. Anyway, the explanation is complex and wide-ranging for the same reason the layoffs are so deep and continuous and sit alongside many studio closures and even more canceled games, Ball says. As the industry faltered, games suffered. High-profile releases like Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League were commercial failures. And while there are many reasons for this, online right-wing groups reduced it to a single mantra: go woke, go broke. It's get woke, go broke, by the way. By their logic, if a game does poorly and even has a whiff of diversity, be it regarding gender, sexuality, or race, that disappointing performance is the fault of diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI. All right, let's stop there for a moment and talk about this point. First off, it's get woke and go broke. But that's not always... So you're reducing us down to a whiff of diversity. You're really gaslighting people here. Very often, it's way more than that, okay? Way more than that. You can't talk about a whiff of diversity. This is something that's been going on in gaming for quite some time now, and it's been going on so much, and it's been happening so often that gamers are tired of it, okay? It's a constant thing, year after year, game after game. We've watched franchise after franchise have their main character get replaced. Their main character that was formerly a straight white male protagonist get replaced by either a female, a black person, a gay person, or any combination of those three things. A black female, a gay black man, whatever. So we see that constantly, and we saw it several times in 2024. And it may not have been like 100% replaced, but we saw things like Alan Wake 2, where Alan Wake had to share the gameplay of his game that bore his name with a black female protagonist and play part of the game as her. Now, it wouldn't be so bad on its own, right? It wouldn't be so bad on its own. But what was discovered was there were consultation companies out there that pushed for this kind of stuff. One in particular called Sweet Baby Inc. that pushed for diversity, equity, and inclusion in video games. And they were exposed in 2024 by Cabrutus, Brutus Rambo, a gentleman out of, what was it, Brazil, who created a curated list on Steam where he would put up the names of these different games that Sweet Baby Inc. worked on. Okay. Now, these games, they were just put up there like Sweet Baby Inc. worked on this game, this game, this game, and this game. And you could do what you wanted on it with that list. Okay. That list grew. People subscribed to that list rapidly, and it grew. Last I saw, it was like roughly around 500,000 people were subscribed to that list. And you looked at that list and you said, wow. And if you looked at the games on that list, the games, you could see the influence there. Like God of War Ragnarok, for instance, right? I enjoyed the game. Okay. For the most part. There was a part of that game that bothered me a little bit. It didn't really bother me, but it threw me out of the game a little bit. And that was the character of Angerboda, a Jotunheim, which is a frost giant from Norse legend that was played by a young black girl. And that took me completely out of the game when she came on the screen. And her grandmother was also played by a black actress. And I'm like, well, why? These are frost giants. They're not supposed to be black people. It's just not part of Norse legend and all that. And you can call me what you want, on this, well, they're legendary things. They're this and that. I don't care. Whatever. You say what you want. I prefer a story to be told and to have that authenticity to it. If you were telling me a story that dealt with African legend and African gods or whatever and history and all that, and all of a sudden you threw in, white people that didn't belong there, I'd be like, well, that's kind of weird too, or Asian people and all. It just, it rings kind of weird, especially in a pantheon of gods and the frost giants and all that sort of thing. Whenever we look in history and any depiction of the frost giants, they're either white or they're blue. And it's just the way it's always been. And so to see that was kind of jarring. Now, the young lady did a fantastic job playing the character. I'm not taking anything away from her. I never disparaged the job she did. I never attacked her personally. I would never go to her and make, and call her anything for that. And I would never condone that sort of behavior. But the fact that, Sweet Baby Inc. pushed for that, and I guarantee you that's what their contribution to that game was. It's just kind of silly, Why do we push for these things? There's no reason to push for stuff like that in a game that has an ethnic setting, okay? If you have something like The Witcher that's set in Poland and involves historical Polish characters and the history of Poland, that's what it should center around. We don't need to bring other people in there, We don't. If it's set in Japan, it should be centered around Japanese people. We don't need Yasuke in there. We see Yasuke being brought in, a black, quote-unquote samurai who was never a samurai, for the next Assassin's Creed game, and that caught a lot of backlash. And we just see it over and over and over again, and it's silly, and it's annoying, and it's like, come on, guys, will you just stop? We see what you're doing. You've been exposed, and it's just cheesy, and it doesn't make sense. How are you going to have the only black man in Japan, in feudal Japan, right, back in the day, be a stealthy assassin, okay? He's the only guy that looks like that. How is he going to sneak in and out of places? Everybody who sees him is going to remember him because he looks so different. I mean, right? God, it's absolutely insane. And then to make it all worse, I mean, they took it out since then, but to make it all worse in the combat, when he was in combat, they're playing some hip hop style music. It just goes to show you how lame these developers are and how utterly racist they are. I mean, that's like, why would this man who came from Africa in the time of feudal Japan have hip hop music playing when he's fighting? That makes zero sense. It's so lame. Anyway, let's get back to things here. So, yeah. Although there have been many incredible games released this year, Balatro, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor, Fantasio, Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, they just couldn't distract from the troubles faced by the people making them. They couldn't make up for the fact that the meta-narrative of video games in 2024 was bleak. Ball says that the blame for all this can't be pinned on a single thing like capitalism, mismanagement, COVID-19, or even interest rates. It also involves development costs, how studios are staffed, consumers' spending habits, and game pricing. This storm is so brutal, he says, because it is all of these things at once, and none have really alleviated since the layoffs began. Now, for indie developers specifically, the threat to their existence has been substantial. Dozens of small studios shuttered in 2024, though it's difficult to get a full picture of how many indie studios the industry lost, as they're more likely to shut down quietly and without much fanfare, or before many players even know they exist. With dwindling opportunities to get funding from investors and little cash to go around, developers sought alternative methods to fund their games in the past year. Some took bankrolling into their own hands. Among Us creator Inner Sloth launched an initiative to give fellow developers back to finished products. Others, like Tales of Kenzera, Zal developer Sargent Studios, made their plans public in early development in hopes of attracting investments, all while fending off racist attacks from the anti-DEI crowd, making the challenges they're facing twofold. Let's stop again. Tales of Kenzera Zal was on that list for Sweet Baby Inc. Had they not been, they would have flown in under the radar, and there would have been no issue with them. I guarantee that people did not attack that game because the character was black. It was developed by a black man, right? A black developer. I think he was from Africa, and it kind of told the story of, if I'm not mistaken, it was just like I was talking about earlier. It was an African story being told and all that. But because Sweet Baby Inc. had touched it, they tainted it. And this is what's happened now. This is what has become of gaming. So many games have been tainted with DEI that any time now that we see a game come out and that the main character is female, okay, or black or anything other than white, or looks to be like they might be gay or anything like that, instantly the game is going to be written off by a large portion of the gaming community because we automatically assume that it is a quote-unquote DEI hire in gaming. Okay, that's going to automatically be assumed right away because we've been burned too many times. We've seen it happen too many times. So instantly you see it and you go, geez, here we go again. It's another garbage game. And it's going to be written off. You know, look what happened with the recent trailers that were released at the gaming awards. You know, so many of them were panned instantly. And obviously some of them are just pandering to the DEI audience, like the intergalactic one from Naughty Dog looks like trash, you know. And people are defending that up and down, the Naughty Dog defenders, but it looks like trash. The character looks like trash. And not just because of what she looks like, but she just acts like a total see you next Tuesday. And, you know, no redeeming qualities from what I saw in that small trailer, you know, that small bit of time we spent with her. She just doesn't look like the kind of character I'd want to play as or spend 20, 30 hours with. Sorry, you know, not what I'm saying. You know, The Witcher 4, that's a different story. People are trashing that because, you know, Geralt's gone, but, you know, he was supposed to be gone after The Witcher 3. And this is like the natural progression of the story, but people are saying she can't be a Witcher because of the lore of the books and that universe and all that. And I just had somebody make a comment on the video I did on it saying, well, it never specifically said that women cannot do it in the books. And this is a Polish guy that's a huge fan of the series and all that. So I'm kind of interested to see how they handle this. He said that they tried it with women before, but they failed, but they never, and they gave up because they failed so much. So depending on how the writers of this game handle it, it could work. Or they could just be lazy trash and just be like, no, it just worked. You know, whatever. They just could disregard everything. And, you know, if that's what they do, then they're going to pay the price for it and people aren't going to like the game. But if they make it work within the context of the universe and the rules of that universe and how it works, then good for them, man. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what a good writer does. You don't just make up rules or ignore rules to suit your story. You know, you put your story in that universe and you use the rules and you make your story adhere to those rules. That's the way it should be. Anyway, even studios owned by tech juggernauts weren't immune to the industry's contraction. Microsoft shuttered Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. Sony shut down Firewalk. The latter's shuttering wasn't wholly surprising. Its big 2024 release, Concord, was largely considered a flop. Not largely, it was universally considered a flop. But having a hit doesn't give any studios a safety net. Near universal acclaim for Tango's Hi-Fi Rush didn't stop Microsoft's axe. It did, however, give Tango just enough juice to be revived by a new buyer. I remember that was kind of shocking because that game was a hit. In other words, it's been a dismal year for morale. When developers gathered in Los Angeles in June for Summer Game Fest, developer New Blood Interactive brought out a billboard solely to memorialize their fellow developers who lost jobs. We love you. We miss you. We hate money. Well, if you guys started making games for the sake of making good games, you'd make money, and then you wouldn't hate money. If you guys keep acting like activists and making garbage games, it's obvious you hate money because you're not trying to make it, and that's what's killing you. Anyway, this year may have been the 10th anniversary of Gamergate, the 2014 online hate movement that shaped the internet harassment tactics apparent today, but online conversations felt like a trip back in time. Conservative ideologues bemoaned the inclusion of characters who did not fit the cookie-cutter image of a white, cis, hetero man. They complained that DEI was being forced upon them. It wasn't, but it is. And here, again, we have gaslighting going on here. I don't want every character to be a white, and cis, I'm sorry, is a slur. You shouldn't use that word. I don't want every character to be a white man, okay? Oh, straight white man. I want every character to be authentic for the story at hand. If we have a story set in medieval Europe, yeah, I want a straight white guy to play that character. That's, and here's the thing. A lot of games are set in that setting. So that's what those characters should be. They should be straight white guys. If you have characters set in Japan, in feudal Japan, samurais and all that, they should be Japanese men. That's the way it should be, because samurais were Japanese men. They shouldn't be women. They shouldn't be black. They shouldn't be white. They shouldn't be anything other than Japanese men. And that's just the way it is. Now, if you've got a futuristic fantasy game, a futuristic sci-fi game, then you can be whatever you want. That's cool. That gives you the freedom of being human, non-human, alien, whatever color you want, male, female. That's cool, As far as integrating all these weird sexualities and trans and all that, it's best to keep that crap out of games. That stuff's just annoying at this point, and it really serves no purpose in a game other than self-insertion of the developers. Look at what a bomb Dragon Age to Veilguard was. Corian Bush self-inserted his traumatic life into that game and made a joke of a game. Took a beloved franchise. They spent 10 years working on a sequel, and they cocked it all up. Didn't even sell 1.5 million copies, and just created this big trauma dump about being non-binary and trans, and with just cringe scene after cringe scene and garbage dialogue and horrible character design, and everything was just is beyond abhorrent, Anyway, in March, harassment towards a small consultant company called Sweet Baby Inc., we talked about them, reached new heights as bad actors organized through Discord, Steam forums, and their online spaces, branding themselves as Gamergate 2.0. Online mobs harassed developers using tweets, DMs, YouTube videos, and Twitch streams. They targeted anyone with any connection to Sweet Baby and other consultancies, a fairly wide net, as consultants are often brought on to advise on accuracy, sensitivity, and more. Their mission was fighting back against wokeification. The realities of the economic issues impacting games that they love had no place in their tactics. The specter of diversity had more pull than analysts and experts. Well, let's talk about that. There's, that's money. Hiring these outside people. As far as sensitivity goes and all that, that could be managed in-house. There's no reason to bring in outside companies for that kind of garbage. If you can't manage sensitivity, if you can't make a game and make it authentic and all that, any information you need is on the internet, okay? If you need to do research, you could do it on the internet. You don't need to bring in some outside company to do that. And that's part of the overspending of these companies, I'm sure. We heard at some point they were trying to charge, I think, Game Science, who developed Black Myth Wukong, $7 million to go in and consult on that game, a game about a monkey doing some trials for this it's like an old legendary story from Chinese myth or whatever, to consult for what? What are you going to teach the Chinese about this old myth, this mythical story of theirs? I mean, yeah, no thanks, man. $7 million. It's extortion. Kim Belair, the president of that company or the CEO or whatever, herself said, you go in and you threaten the marketing teams and all that, and you tell them, you scare them, and you basically force them into hiring you because you scare them into what will happen if they don't hire you. And that's dirty, man. They're filthy. They deserve to suffer. And I'm sorry, man, but if you are pushing this kind of garbage and your company goes under, well, you deserve it. You should be making good games. You shouldn't be worrying about all this other trash. Make a good game, put good characters in it, put authentic characters in it, and the rest will sort out. Nobody needs to see themselves and be represented in a game. That's stupid. I never played Pac-Man because I felt represented by that little yellow waka 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 ball. I didn't play Donkey Kong because I felt like the little Italian dude jumping up and down over the barrels to go rescue the princess. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. I didn't play as Lara Croft in Tomb Raider because I felt like a woman that day and I wanted to, go explore tombs as a woman. I played because the game was fun. All this other shit, it's stupid. And the people that are pushing for it are stupid. And the people that need it are pathetic. They need therapy. They don't need video games. They don't need representation in video games. They need therapy. Anyway, games with black leads and characters were derided as forced. Female characters deemed unattractive or masculine were suffering from DEI chin. DEI... That's a thing. Look it up. Dragon Age the Veilguard was criticized by far-right trolls for its customization options, which allow players to create characters with top surgery scars or play with a non-binary companion. After reviews were released, conspiracists launched onto cliched phrases or other language as proof that Studio BioWare was instructing reviewers how to talk about their game. That last part, there was something about that. But, I mean, I'm sorry, man. Dragon Age was garbage. You don't put top surgery scars in a game. That's stupid. And it's freaking... Anyway, even not yet released titles, Face Bombardment, Compulsion's game South of Midnight about a young black woman in the Deep South, drew ire from the anti-DEI crowds on platforms like X, where they photoshopped the heroine to make her look less repulsive and put forth conspiracy theories about Sweet Baby Inc.'s influence on the game's development. The original character was white. They changed her to black. And she's disgusting looking. She is. They make these disgusting looking characters for some reason. If they want her to be black, they could make her an attractive black woman. They do exist, I don't know why everybody has to be so ugly. But pressure to remain apolitical, a curious agenda for an entertainment form that marries the artistic preferences of narrative and imaginary worlds with agency granted to players who inhabit them, did not come just from a vocal minority. Following the release of Black Myth Wukong, some streamers were given instructions to avoid talking about COVID-19 or feminist propaganda. The guidelines had the opposite effect, encouraging streamers to lead with the code words they've been barred from, a push against standards meant to actually censor players. Looking ahead to 2025, Ball says he hears more pessimism generally, but it just sucks to contemplate, let alone predict. If there's one plus, he says, it's that there is a lot more hiring happen than is generally believed. Downside is it's not nearly compensating overall, especially in indies. As 2024 comes to a close, the industry is operating from the outside with a business-as-usual mindset. In early December, developers gathered in Los Angeles to celebrate the Game Awards. On stage, host Jeff Keighley made a small speech amid game announcements, accolades, and a performance from Snoop Dogg for some reason. The sad reality is that over the past few years, the games industry has suffered significant and unprecedented industry-wide layoffs, Keighley said. The effects the games we get to play, and even more important, the people who make the games we love. We could debate and certainly disagree with the reasons why, and honestly, as a show, we kind of struggle with how to address these topics in a constructive way. Kaylee used the segment to introduce TGA's first Game Changer Award, a nod to an individual who has positively impacted the industry. Then the show continued with headline-dominating announcements about major projects like The Witcher 4 and the next title from The Last of Us developer Naughty Dog. Amid all of this, the specter of AI, there's still little insight on how much AI will continue to grow and how future games might use it, but it's a rising concern as rank-and-file workers are laid off. No one knows when or if the industry will bounce back with sustainable jobs and compensation. Yes, there will be games to play. It's harder to say how many people will be able to make them. Oh, and of course a woman wrote this. Anyways, we need to get them out of gaming. Sorry. I mean that. Yeah, so there's your article from Wired. You know, defending all the garbage of gaming. Gaming needs this purge. Gaming needs this big time. And a lot of the people getting fired deserve it. I'm sorry to say that. If you work for a company like BioWare and you worked on a project like the Veilguard and you lose your job, I don't feel sorry for you. Even if you didn't want to be a part of that, you still stood by and you let it happen, you know, and that's wrong. I'm sorry. You may make the argument that, well, I have a family. I had to feed my family and all that. There's other ways to feed your family, and you had to know that when that game was coming out, it was going to fail and you were going to lose your job anyway. So what did you do? You put it off for a year, 2 years, whatever. And now you're in the same boat you would have been when you could have actually chosen your time of departure, made plans for it, and actually, you know, moved on to something better. Or maybe you could have spoken up, rallied around with some other people at the job, put an end to it before it happened. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But 2025 is going to be an interesting year. I think we're going to see a major turnaround within gaming. I hope the activists that have lost their jobs don't get rehired. I hope to get blacklisted in this industry. I hope people like Corian Bush end up not working ever again within gaming. I know Corian is still employed at this time, as far as I know. But hopefully that changes, because that person doesn't deserve to work in this industry. You don't put out a game like Dragon Age Veilguard that sucks so bad, wastes so many developers' time, a decade of time for a studio and so many developers, throw away and burn up so much money. You don't get to get away with that, man. If I owned that company, you'd be gone. You'd be gone, and everybody around you would be gone. I'm sorry. Leave a like on the video down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell for notifications. I will see you guys next time. Until then, peace.